Welcome back to Take Two, a discussion of politics, current events, and the times. I'm joined as always by Adam Matlack and Mike Pomerantz, and today our topic is: should all Americans be forced to wear a mask?
I think based on the information that I have about how uh, contagious this is and the number of fatalities, yes, I think that this comes down to a fundamental question of freedom, and one of the ones that we always point to is First Amendment freedom. Everything has limits, and we don't have a king to change those limits as he, or if it's a queen, she sees fit on the fly. We need predictability, which gives us fairness. Everybody should know the rules in advance. So you can't go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire, because that would cause a panic, which would increase the risk that people are going to suffer injuries. It is the same rationale for making people wear a mask at this point. If you force people to wear a mask, you make sure that they're not going to increase the risk of fatality among their neighbors. It's just like protecting people from carrying on. Let's say I decided to set my house on fire. I wanted to burn my house to the ground. It's my house. It's my ground. Well, what happens if it first of all, it's going to destroy the value of my neighbor's houses. Second of all, it might burn down their houses too. The state is justified in stopping me from taking part in that activity. And I think, it's not a great comparison, but I think a lot of the same logic applies to where we are now. You need to be able to stop someone from going into a place where people can't socially distance just because they're worried about the American way of life. It's one thing if you're not going to hurt anybody else, but in this instance, I take it as a given that you are going to hurt somebody else, or at least you statistically increase that possibility. So for that reason, I say the state has the power, and I am thankful for the intervention.
Okay, there's two sides to this here. It's critical that we distinguish. Me walking down a sidewalk, I'm on public land for the most part. It's not my private property, and the government has policing rights over that. Now, that and a private establishment are two totally different things. So, should Kroger or your local grocery store be able to force somebody to stop them at the door and say, look, you can't come in here without a mask? The answer is unequivocally yes. They should be able to do that at any time, whenever they want, because it's their property and it's their business, and it's the way they want to be able to do. And anybody who says otherwise is, if you're on the other side of this stuff with the cake making stuff, the baker in Denver who didn't bake cakes and refused to bake specialty cakes for homosexuals, it's super clear to me that there's no way it's super clear to me that there's absolutely no difference here. If that baker has a right to say, I'm not going to serve these people because it's against my religion or whatever, Kroger has the right to tell you can't shop in there unless you wear a mask. So don't pretend that there's some magical difference between those two things. So it makes sense. If you were on that side, you need to be on this side. Now, it's important that we distinguish and go back here. Me walking down the sidewalk, however, is not a store. And should I be forced to, and then if I do not comply, go to jail or be fined because I'm not wearing some mask? I've got a lot of problems here. The first one being is that there's no distinction between what's a mask and what's an appropriate one. I could walk around and it be a used mask. It could be not a mask at all. It could be these stupid cotton things that people are putting over their mouths, acting like it's doing something. And so I've got a lot of problems with this. Oh, well, as long as they got something over their face, they're not breaking. No, come on. This is way too slippery of a slope for me to enforce any kind of public adherence to this. If you are too scared of being outside, and you need to be outside, or you need to go do these things. You need to be in a certain location. You should be masked up. You should be wearing a hazmat suit for all I care. I saw a thing where somebody's wearing a scuba gear and oxygen in the store. I applaud them. It's a little much, but I applaud them because, hey, they're taking it. I'm not messing with you guys. I'm not even going to breathe the same air as you guys. And that's something that I get it. Not everybody can walk around in scuba gear, but at the same time, if we go back to the real question here is, should they be allowed to enforce this at all? There's no way you're going to convince me that the government should be able to dictate what I wear in public. And I get it. I'm going to elicit, well, it's for everyone's health. There's so many ways around it. There's so many problems with it. And the biggest one being is that most people are going to wear a mask that's unfit and not actually do what it's supposed to do if enforced that way. And then you go down the line, well, then we need a mask enforcement agency. And then we need to grow the government even bigger than it already is. And then it needs attached to my nipples and tell me what the right temperature I should be. And we go down the list. And so I'm not willing to admit to give ground in public. If private companies want to enforce that, all for it, great for them. There's no way the government should be able to do it.
Well, there's another conversation, and there was a case before the court yesterday, but before the Supreme Court yesterday, the Little Sisters of the Poor attempting to restrict abortion services based on religious exemption, which gets right into the case. But if we talk about the public land and the sidewalks are owned by the person who owns the property, but it's still, there's a public part, at least in Pennsylvania and New Jersey law, there's a public part to enforcing safety on even that. Like the sidewalk is private land, but it's like this easement. Everybody uses it, and it's kind of a handshake with the governing authority in most jurisdictions. But the idea of controlling behavior in that space in order to promote public safety, I mean, that's all set. That's already present. I guess I'm wondering what's at the bottom of the slope. In other words, when we're asking people, and I want to take out the wrong mask part of it for just a second. I mean, you can disagree with the regulation. You can say the regulation to put a piece of cotton in front of your nose and your mouth is the wrong regulation. And that's different from saying no regulation. You could say, well, they should regulate, but they just need to do a better job of it. That's one question. I think our question is, can they regulate at all in this space? And if you're saying no because of the slippery slope, what is at the bottom of that slope? I mean, if I were forced to wear a face mask that said, Trump Pence 2020, I guess that would be something bad at the bottom of that slope. But like what is the thing that's going to happen? Everybody says, well, you're going to get rounded up. They're going to put you in a concentration camp because of your beliefs. But I guess I need a little bit of help getting from, you have to wear a mask in public so that when you sneeze, less of your stuff goes all over the place. How you get from there to Korematsu and Auschwitz and genocide?
Well, okay. Two things. Disclaimer here. I wear a mask in public. When I go out, I want to be very clear. I had masks before any of this even started. I had so many masks, I've given them away. And so I am not in some line where I was sitting there thinking this was never something needed. I have the full-on respirators even. It's not like I was sitting around and this was surprising to me. It's about the volunteer aspect of this. If I want to voluntarily wear a mask, I should be able to do so. It's very interesting to me. If I was literally having this conversation with my wife 2 days ago, I said, man, gotta be honest. When the banks reopen, got to feel pretty good to be walking into a bank when you're fully masked and no one can see your face except your eyes. And what that implies long term, and what the bank is going to rectify. Are you not going to be able to show? Are you going to be able to go into a bank and it not mean that there's these, you got masks, you're completely hidden from the cameras, and you can just walk into a bank that's notoriously a huge sign of like, I'm about to take all your money, and this is now a threat. And so it's very interesting that the effects that happen as you go, and you're looking for the bottom. I would say, let's talk about enforcement real quick. One way to enforce the mask stuff is you would make 5 or 6 companies, probably only one, that would make specific masks. They would produce them, then they would have tag tracking on them. If somebody came up and wanted to check your mask, you'd be able to scan it. You wouldn't have to take it off. You would see who made it. You would be able to understand all this stuff. They would have a database. It would be, for the government to do it, it would take, I don't know, anywhere between $5 to $25 billion to execute even marginally well, and they wouldn't. It would be a giant disaster, just like almost everything else they do. But the can it be done? Yeah, it can be done, but is it going to be designed by the people who operate the government now? Absolutely not. There's no way. They don't know how to enforce anything that they think they can try to enforce. They try to enforce the wrong thing the wrong way, the least efficient way. And so look at the IRS and income tax. They're totally lost. If they wanted to get collections of much higher money, there's so many other ways to do it and far less ways to be confused about it. But this is where we are, and this is what we do. So going down the line, though, at the end of the day, I cannot see myself living in a country where it's okay. I mean, it's literally, I don't want to go all the way and say, look, if you're not wearing masks, you're going to be put here. But if we go down just a little bit step further from masks, we get to vaccines. And then we're talking about something very interesting, because you go, okay, are you vaccinated? Are you allowed to leave your house if you haven't been vaccinated? And this is going to be, it won't be, because they're not going to find a vaccine. Don't let anybody convince you that they will, even though that's what everyone's saying. Okay, they're not going to find a vaccine. But let's say they do. All right, they find a vaccine, and if you're not inoculated, you're not allowed to leave your house. And that's where some of these steps start to come in, where they have green zones and red zones, and people who are vaccinated can move in and from green zones and red zones. This is far more plausible. And then it's not quite a camp, but it is a restriction of movement that if you don't adhere to this, we're not gonna, and I'm, in some ways, I'm okay with it, actually. In a lot of ways, like that's the answer to most of these vaccine answers. I'm not going to pull somebody out of their house and shoot some serum in them that they don't want to have in there. However, I will restrict their movements to the point. And this is my acceptance of like, okay, well, we're gonna all agree. We all agree when we go into Kroger, we're gonna wear masks. We're gonna be vaccinated. That's what we agree to. The public movements outside of that's where it gets sketchy. So, but to me, the next step is vaccines, and I'm gonna let you respond because I think it's important.
Well, I don't want to go too long. I mean, there's a lot here. Certainly, when we talk about vaccinations and voluntary behavior, there's an entire universe of people. To me, they're flat earthers.
Oregon, there's all the people up in Washington. Yeah.
I do recognize that there is a terrible currency coming for. There will be a disproportional value if you're able to show, whether it's true or not, that you're immune.
Yeah.
And that is super duper dangerous. This is like some weird biohack elitism that is being introduced into a society where there's already so much divide. And this is potentially a life or death divide. So, that part of it is incredibly scary, because I think if I'm understanding the point you're making about that, if that's the bottom of the slope, you've actually, I'm not saying you've changed my mind, but I think that's something about which a very serious discussion must occur. Sadly, if we don't ever get a vaccine, then we're not going to have the discussion.
I think we will.
But I hope we do. I think the idea is that I want help being protected from not my awesome neighbor who lives over there, but my crazy neighbor who lives over there.
Right.
And I don't want to have to do that. Okay, so we can critique that, but I don't want to have to be responsible for protecting myself for what I perceive to be someone who's volunteering to act irrationally and dangerously. And the answer, if the rule about what constitutes irrational and dangerous behavior is wrong, is to get new rule makers. And we don't have a great system for that in this country, but it's the best one anywhere. So, I don't want to change that.
And just as a rebuttal there is that for me, the way to change the rules is to get rid of all of them. I don't think I say it often, power is the problem. And no matter who the rule maker is, somebody's going to not like the rules they set. And so when you set the rules for yourself, you're more and more likely to like the outcome. So,
all right. Thank you both for your thoughts. That's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed our discussion, please be sure to like and subscribe below and join us for the next installment of Take Two.